This morning, the First Minister launched a Charter of Rights for people affected by substance use. It forms a key part of the Scottish Government's National Mission on Drugs, which includes a target to provide 650 beds a year from 2026. Currently, the maximum capacity sits at 513.
There is a growing number of rehab places that are available, and we are on target to achieve the levels that were set out in the National Mission, and I'm confident that we can do that. We've obviously put the resources in place in the budget to enable that to be the case, but of course that has to be supported by Parliament before it can be put into effect.
Charities say that it's actually a real terms cut in terms of funding for those resources. So how is that going to achieve the target number of rehab beds?
We're putting into the budget for next year the same resources that we have this year, but we've changed the way in which that is being deployed with greater baseline support for alcohol and drug partnerships.
The themes in this Christmas classic will strike a chord with many in the audience. Those on stage aim to show it's never too late to change your life for the better. Ewan Petrie.
I think we've reached a moment in Scotland where real progress is now able to be made, because we've moved away from, a criminal justice criminalising those people affected by substance use to seeing it now much more as a public health issue and a human rights issue. And so the establishment of the National Collaborative as part of the National Mission on Drugs to take a human rights-based approach is very, very important. And that will lead to a process then of developing a Charter of Rights and an implementation framework, how they should be made real.
Hello. Well, this is a really peculiar one for me, to be honest, because in the past, I've made no secret of my my past addictions and whatnot. I've done so on streams, I've done so on videos and whatnot throughout the years, spoken about my past problems. Just to sort of briefly summarize for anybody who's not aware, because I'm not really ashamed of it in terms of speaking out about it, but of course I'm ashamed of the fact that I ended up in the positions that I ended up in. But from about the age of 17, going on 18 to about 21 years of age, I was heavily addicted to methadone, Madcat as it was called, MCAT, Meow Meow, whatever, and alcohol as well. Went teetotal for several years, and then post-lockdown period, due to sort of personal problems in my life, going into 2021 and 2022, I ended up addicted to alcohol again and amphetamine for a while, and I eventually overcame said demons, ended up in a position where I was sort of all right, I guess. But my point is, I'm not coming at this this sort of subject as somebody who's totally against the idea of drugs and drink and whatnot. If anything, I've always been, to a certain extent, somewhat empathetic of people who end up in these positions. I've spoken out for years about mental health and whatnot on this channel sporadically. I just find it difficult to come to terms with the framing of this shite, and that's how, I'm sorry, I just think it's shite. like human rights. I mean, I will elaborate somewhat in just a second, but the framing of this, it's just very reminiscent of the same sort of BS that I've seen for years. Irrespective of like which particular topic the Scottish government and their lackeys are talking about, it's the same framework. Human rights, human rights defenders, etc. I just find it bizarre. Why the fuck do you need human rights charters? Why does the United Nations need to get involved in people's substance misuse? I'm all for more funding. I mean, these are the sort of things what the government should be prioritizing: homelessness, mental health, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. Like, this is where taxpayers' money should be going, or even potholes, dare I say, as opposed to funding Ukraine, funding fucking India, for their space programs and whatnot. The list is endless in that regard, of all the absolute piss poor alleged decisions that our governments in question make. Our taxpayers' money should be prioritizing our own people. It should go without saying. I know I'm preaching to a choir in that regard, but just to give you like a wee example, there's a few other things that I would suggest that funding should be put into. For example, even as of late, Scottish government have been speaking about, their prevention of violence against women and girls. More than 100 organisations working to tackle violence against women and girls will receive 19 million in new funding, right? and you just come through the list, of course, and it's just... if it's no councils getting some money, it's women. Where's the funding for like Men's Aid? Oh, but before somebody turns around and says to me that there is some funding, this bit here, it says that through our Delivering Equally Safe Fund, the Scottish Government provides funding to organisations which supports the aims of Delivery Equally Safe strategy. While the DESS primarily focuses on eradicating violence against women and girls, it also acknowledges that men can also be victims of rape and domestic abuse, right? Oh, that's good of them. They acknowledge that, of course. Then it says that the government also... provides funding to organisations which supports victims and survivors of crime across Scotland, such as men who are victims of rape and domestic abuse. But there's not any specific funding for, men who are the victims of such instances, in particular, in comparison to women. Another example, because this isn't just about men and women, the SSPCA, Scottish SPCA, whatever you want to call it, their own website says... we are Scotland's emergency service for animals, and we do it all without any government funding. Where's their funding? There's plenty of things that I think that the government should be prioritizing, but I'm not in the government. I'm not in the government, unfortunately. But that doesn't change my perspective in terms of what should and what shouldn't be funding. So the reason I bring all that up is because I still wholeheartedly believe that there should be an astronomical increase in the amount of funding that should be put into these facilities for people to get the help if they so choose to obtain said help for their substance misuse. But this framing, I really, really disapprove. I just find it creepy. Maybe I'm being far too skeptical. I don't know. I just don't like it, to be honest. And I'll show you exactly what I'm speaking about right now. Charter of Rights for People Affected by Substance Use, Scottish Government's website. Published today, 11th of December. Slippery Swinney has welcomed human rights advances, or advancements even. The Charter of Rights for People Affected by Substance Use has been launched, aiming to improve the experience of anyone needing support. And why do we need a Charter of Rights? This is what I'm on about. Why can't you just provide funding? Why can't funding just be provided? Now, as I said previously, maybe I'm just being far too skeptical, but this is just so reminiscent of like everything that I've ever covered for years on this channel. You know, whether it's like the UNCRC or whether it's fucking immigration, it doesn't matter. It does not matter the subject matter at hand. It's the same framing. The Charter recognizes the first of its kind in the world by the UN of the High Commissioner for Human Rights will help ensure people know their rights and support that they can expect to receive, and that those who use drugs and alcohol and their families are treated with dignity. Dignity, knowing their rights. I mean, these are people, the people we're speaking about here are either drug addicts or are alcoholics and or both. Okay. I think the last thing they give a fuck about is knowing their rights. And they most certainly don't care about being dignified. But irrespective, it's just the framing. It's so weird. And the PDF is even worse, by the way, which I've read through and I will show in a second. It goes on to say it contains key human rights, mostly drawn from national and international law, belonging to people affected by substance use. Most importantly, the right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, along with the right to an adequate standard of living and the right to a healthy environment. The right to a healthy environment. This is, again, reminiscent of the UNCRC. One of the rights that children now have is a right to a healthy environment. The publication was developed by the National Collaborative, a network of people with lived experience. I mean, the fucking framing, man, it's just bizarre to me. I mean, I guess I could title this video, I'm not going to, but I guess I could title this video as, coming from an ex-addict or words to that effect, because I have been there. It was chaired by human rights expert Professor Alan Miller. I wonder if Alan Miller has ever been an addict. Anyhow, Slippery Swinney, speaking at the launch of said charter, said that my condolences go to all of those who have lost a loved one. We want every person experiencing harm from alcohol or drug use to be able to access the support they need. And through our 250 million national mission on drugs, we're taking a wide range of actions, such as fucking rooms where you can shoot up in. Yeah, that's really a game changer, that one. Again, why do we need a human rights charter for this BS? Why do we need to sort of, how would I frame this? Why do we need to sort of insert UN bile, UN framing, UN rhetoric into the lives of the people within society that are arguably one of the lowest forms of life in terms of the sort of intersectional ladder? You know, why do that? I think this is disgusting, to be honest. You know, you're effectively just you're approaching people who are in the pits of despair, rock bottom, etc. And here's a solution. Here's some UN BS for you. How do you feel now, man? This charter, according to Slippery Swinney, is a key part of that mission and draws on the experience of communities and families affected by substance use, significantly strengthening our public health and human rights-based approach. This fucking framing, man. Human rights-based approach to substance use-related harms, and over time, it will contribute to significantly improving and saving lives. Why do you need a human rights charter in order to do these things? Why can't you just provide the necessary funding? You know, why? I mean, is it a pat on the back escapades? I don't know. I'm struggling with this shit. I welcome the support of the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, which recognizes the charter as the first of its kind in the world. Of course, Scotland's always the first to do things. You know, we're a great, progressive, and inclusive and diverse country. Anyway, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, says criminalization and prohibition have failed to reduce drug use and deter drug-related crimes. We need new approaches, prioritizing health, dignity, and inclusion, guided by the International Guidelines on Human Rights and Drug Policy. Very interesting word use there, may I add. Criminalization has failed to reduce drug use. Is this the route that we're headed in? We're just going to mimic Portugal, are we? Look how that fucking worked out. Regardless, takes us to the PDF, by the way, which is a shower of BS. It's as I say, I don't know. I struggle with this. It's just I don't understand why we need any of this crap in order to provide the necessary funding. You know, National Collaborative Charter of Rights for People Affected by Substance Use. Okay. And it's only 20 pages. I'm not going to go through the entirety of it, but just to sort of show you some of the creepy verbiage, because as I say, it is weird. I don't get it. I'm struggling. I really am. Purpose of the Charter of Rights is to, as it says there, support people affected by substance use to realize the human rights which belong to them. Okay. Support service providers to understand how to implement the human rights which belong to the people affected by substance use, and to shift the power and change the culture from criminalization and stigma towards public health and human rights. ... The so-called undeserving coming to see themselves as rights holders, and the service providers better understanding what their role may be as duty bearers. There's a lot to unpack there, to be honest, but I think I will let you be the judge, jury, and executioner. What the fuck that's supposed to imply. The Charter draws from the International Guidelines on Human Rights and Drug Policy, which sets out best practice as identified by the United Nations, of course, you know, because they say jump and the SMP go, oh my God, how high, daddy. Rights holders are people affected by substance use who identify and claim their human rights under a legal framework. The primary duty bearer is the government. In the context of substance use, this may also include local government, health and social care providers, scrutiny bodies, police, prisons, tribunals, courts, and other relevant bodies. Certain private bodies carrying out public services may also be duty bearers. A lot of peculiar words, may I just add. So then, of course, there's 7 rights depicted within said charter. The following key rights are drawn from existing law, the UK Human Rights Act and international law. The descriptions of the duties draw on international guidance on human rights and drug policy, which set out the international understanding of best practice, as of course backed by the UN. Following on briefly here, it goes on to say that the selection of of the 7 key rights was informed by a nationwide evidence gathering process and the international guidance on human rights and drug policy. So, of course, the first right in this charter is the right to life, which is protected by Article 2 of the Human Rights Act, which is already part of our law in Scotland. Going on to elaborate slightly by saying that duty bearers should take steps to increase the life expectancy of people who use substances. I mean, fuck off. The second right is the right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, which is set out in Article 12 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The UK, including Scotland, is under an international legal obligation to implement this covenant. The proposed Scottish Human Rights Bill, which is a story in and of itself, which I've covered in the past, would bring this into our law in Scotland. The right to health, as understood in international law, means that you should have access to the support for your physical and mental health. Yeah, I understand that, and I agree with that. But why do we need this shite? Just provide funding, maybe actually prioritize taxpayers' money on things that are important or imperative. But yeah, but they never do they? And then we've got the right to an adequate standard of living. The right to an adequate standard of living is set out in Article 11 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, with the UK, including Scotland, being under international legal obligation to implement this covenant. The proposed Scottish Human Rights Bill brings in this right is, as understood in international law, means that you should have access to things which support you to live with dignity. This includes having enough food, clothing, housing, and access to social security. Tell that to all the fucking homeless people on waiting lists, etc., etc. You people are full of fucking shit. It's unbelievable, but regardless, the right to private and family life protects your dignity and right to make decisions about your own life. And these people, it's remarkable, eh? I mean, it's not even, it's the way that it's worded this is so subjective, because at the end of the day, if you want to live your life a particular way, they ain't going to be happy with, are they? You can't live off grid for what you can, but they'll try and fucking screw you over in that regard, You don't want to work, you get fucked over, etc. This includes being able to determine your own sexuality, having autonomy over yourself physically and psychologically, and being able to control information about your private life. That's more bullshit. Including information about your substance use and or treatment. It also includes your right to control who sees and touches your body. It's just very peculiar wording. The right to a healthy environment was recently recognized by the UN in response to a growing awareness of the importance of the environment, of course, climate change. UN Sustainable Development Goal 13. Who said that? I don't know. Including physical and mental health and the need to address the impacts of climate change. This right is understood in international law, means that you should have access to clean, safe air, water, land, and soil free from pollution. It also means the place you live should make you feel safe. What the fuck has this got to do with people that are addicted to drugs? Seriously, what the fuck? Honestly, come on. Oh my God, man. Duty bearers should take steps to protect the rights of people who have been detained due to drug-related offences or who are under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time of their arrest or questioning. You people. Oh, that's funny, yeah. That's fucking funny, because the 3 times that I was taken into the cells about 2 months ago, I was out my fucking face. But apparently I've got a right. I've got a right for that not to be the case. Yeah, fuck off. Foolish shit. Drug or alcohol treatment as an alternative to prison should only be undertaken with informed consent and where medically appropriate. No penalty should be attached to failure to complete such a treatment. And the 7th right is freedom from arbitrary arrest or detention. The right to be free from arbitrary arrest or detention is contained within the Human Rights Act and is so part of our law in Scotland. This means that you must not be arrested or imprisoned without reasons which are set out in the law. If you are arrested, you must be made aware of the reasons and given a fair trial. If a police officer has reason to believe that you have been involved in a crime or that you are in possession of drugs, they can search you. You shouldn't be stopped or searched because of your race, blah, blah, blah. Duty bearers must make sure that people are not detained solely based on substance use or dependence. I mean, is this the route we're going down now, by the way? Like, it's just like... Is this like a move towards sort of decriminalizing drug use or drug possession in Scotland? I don't know. Kind of looks like that to me. Duty bearers should prioritize diversion from prosecution, non-custodial measures for people charged with or convicted of substance offences. You have rights to give positive or negative feedback. I mean, this is just creepy, man. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about all this, to be honest. I just feel like you could very easily, if you really gave a fuck, put more money into, the necessary programs, organizations, charities, or even the NHS, explicitly, specifically for the things in question here. Drug rehabilitation and or alcohol rehabilitation, alcohol and or drug rehab centers, etc. But there's just nothing really. Well, not enough anyway, nowhere near enough, but that's fine. We'll just implement a fucking bill, copy and paste the proverbial United Nations bill, and everything will be fine. I don't know, man. Find it a bit weird. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm far too skeptical, but maybe I just disagree. In fairness, I a bit too long in the tooth now at this point. Anyway, I will leave on that note. Peace.